Shooting it raw?
Yes. Shooting it raw. Okay. I like how you think. I don't know you, but I like how your brain put this together. It's okay. So it's an image made high noon kind of style. Could be. It's dominated by what looks like a concrete bench of rocks put together. I can just barely see some inscription carved into one of the stones. And behind it is this tree. I don't know the exact species of the tree, and there are some other trees with larger trunks. The ground is mostly sort of brushed. It's flat. I mean, for all I know, this image was made down the road from the first image, because just far in back I can see what could be like a lake or a river. I wish I could read the inscription. Maybe you'll tell me what it is, but what is the significance of this one? And it's called Connections.
Yeah, this is a bench on our campus, on the Northern Illinois University campus. And it's a bench that was built by a class back in near the turn of the 19th century. So it was 19th, 20th century. So it was around 1905, 1906.
Wow.
And students over the years get their picture taken at that bench. And one of the things that drove me to pick this one is that as dean, I get to make connections with people, with alumni and our current students in ways that I might not normally get to have those types of connections. And there was a gentleman an alumni who graduated. He's from India. He came here as an international student back decades ago. And I had the opportunity to reach out to him and just talk to him about his experiences and some advice. I wanted to seek his advice on some directions from his major and all the rest. And I dug up some information about him, and I found a photo of him sitting at that bench with his friends.
Okay.
And this is somebody who came without much. He had a job in our college as a technical kind of support person back 2 or 3 decades ago. And there he is in this photo with his buddies, many of them from India, in this small town in Northern Illinois in the middle of nowhere, right?
Wow.
And he's had an incredibly successful career and has been very generous to the university. And I just think that image just shows that a lot of people walk through spaces, very normal spaces, but have their lives transformed in some ways. And we all have those places that we know of that are important to many, many people that walk through. In Chicago, the Bean, I don't know if you're familiar with the Bean, Chicago's just down the road from where I live. Okay. And there's this sculpture right on the lakefront called the Bean. It's this beautiful steel sculpture. It's big. You can walk under it and it's reflective and you see the reflection of the city. And people go there. It's a touchstone, and lots of people have walked through that. If you go to New York, I used to live in New York. If you go to Rockefeller Center or to Times Square, these touchstone places that people have that connect us through time. And it's not just about while we're here, but it's also going back hundreds of years. Where the Bean is in Chicago is very near where the first settler established Chicago. It's where Native Americans also had a central focal settlement. There were Native Americans on our campus prior to the settlement by Europeans. And so it's thinking of places over time, I think, that we're walking through this space, the impacts that we're having now, but we're not sure what the future will bring. So it's these connections with time and space that I think I wanted to evoke in that idea. If you think about Madonna, Madonna is such a big superstar, but and she's with us, she's still active, but her first album is closer to World War II, the end of World War II, than it is to now.
Right.
And that amount of change that we have over time is big.
Yes. Okay. So here's what's an interesting thing, because I meet you, I start getting access to how you think and how you see the world. And I know that your training is about looking at systems that change very, very slowly, or the scales of the time scales are like hundreds of thousands of years, if not millions of years. So as a geologist, you can read a landscape on these massive scales. And then even like this bench that is so heavy, and it's like cement with massive stones, right? So
Right.
even if it's 100 years old, would barely register as a blip, right, in terms
Right.
of archaeological time or whatever. And yet, one of the sensibilities you're bringing that's weaving through is this notion of connection, and this notion of making of humans putting an imprint on the landscape and also being imprinted by the landscape. So when I see this image and hear you talking about it, I connect it to, for example, walking around Jerusalem, right? So you walk around the old city and you can literally step on stones that were worn down from, Roman, if not older, technology, 2,000 or 3,000 years old. And you're there walking around drinking a Coke. So it's
Right.
that connection over time as well. Okay. For me, this is the real privilege to have somebody who's I understand books and synthesizing books, and you have like 8 or 9 books, and so what I'd like for you to do is evoke in a listener what fuels you to, for example, your most recent book. Like, what was the motivation that really kind of guided you to collect these works into a text, and why should people go out and read it?
Well, I think it's because there's so much beauty in the world right now, and
Nice. Yes.
I think that's what motivates me, is to try to protect the beauty as much as we can, and also to recognize that the world is beautiful with us in it. There was a book written a few years ago. It was so depressing. It was called The World Without Us. I don't know if you remember that book, 10,
Mm.
20 years ago. But it was basically written by somebody who studies stuff like what I study, that said, what would happen to a variety of different things if people disappeared from the planet one day? And it looked at
Hmm.
things like nuclear power plants or water systems or whatever. And it was really an interesting book, but the world has us in it, and the
Hmm.
world is not going to disappear. If you study geology, we see extinction. You could study the fossil record and you see things come and go. And
Yeah.
maybe we're at a point where we might be partially going away. I don't know. I don't want to
Mm.
predict that. But we're certainly in a time of major change. And whether or not we can navigate through it is a big question mark. And we could certainly build the tools to navigate through that effectively, through making smarter choices like eating less meat and
Hmm.
driving less and having a smaller footprint on the planet, all of those kinds of things. There are things we can
Hmm.
do. And I
Yeah.
think that just taking charge of our lives in a more thoughtful way helps us make sense of the world right now.
Full on, full on. I love it. I absolutely love it. I had no idea, and thank you so much for sharing this. This is great.
Thanks so much for having me. It was great.
So the links are going to be to your books, to your work, and I really hope the listener will go check it out, because just from your emails, your energy comes through. I think I even wrote that to you. I said you seem so switched on. Like, it just I that personally is hugely motivating. So now we have this connection.
I love it. Thank you so much.
So is life really a gift? Really? Can you make every second count? That's the whole point of the podcast. So if you like what you've seen and you're inspired, because that really is my mission, then please give it a like, subscribe, and share.
Shooting it raw?
Yes, shooting it raw.